Talking Georgia football with Palmer Thombs from Dogs 247 Sports. You know the brand 247 Sports, dogs247.com. Just look it up right there. Check out Palmer's work covering Georgia football. So you had a pretty interesting theory in regards to the backup quarterback position that you shared with me before we started to record. JT Daniels, of course, everybody wants to see him play. I'm guessing, let's say 15 games would be a good number for Georgia fans this year. And, but besides that, the room is loaded, stacked, talented, somewhat inexperienced outside of Stetson Bennett, of course, but he's the guy with the least talent but the most experience. And just your thoughts about how this may play out. God forbid JT Daniels has to miss a game or two or more.
Yeah, Kirby Smart has been it was an interesting move to see him come out and announce JT Daniels as the starter. It's something that he didn't do with Justin Fields and Jake Fromm. That whole situation, he didn't even do it once Fields was out, and Fromm was very clearly the guy. You look at Kirby Smart's quarterback history here at Georgia, he has never come out and announced this guy's our starting quarterback. He may have done it with Jacob Eason. That was before I was covering the team. But with Eason that first year, he was a true freshman coming in, and he didn't start the first game. So, Kirby didn't do that. It was him and another guy playing against North Carolina. Eason ended up taking over, obviously was the starter going into that next year before he got injured in the first game, and Fromm took over and held Eason off after that. Fromm holds on to the position group. So it was an interesting move to see Kirby come out and say, hey, JT is our starter. He's our guy. We're going to roll with him. We're excited about him. And I completely agree with that in terms of what Georgia fans are thinking. There's a lot of excitement about what JT Daniels can do. But as we were talking about before, behind him is going to be interesting to watch on Saturday. You've got, like you said, Stetson Bennett is a very experienced option, but probably the least talented quarterback in that room. And he would probably wear that with a chip on his shoulder. I think he played that way all last season and did so admirably. But just in terms of just raw talent and recruiting rankings, he's by far and away the lowest rated quarterback in that room. It would be interesting if Daniels went down, be it for a helmet coming off and he has to come out of play. Maybe he goes down in the middle of the game. Stetson Bennett is probably the guy because of how experienced he is in this offense. Played a full season in it last year, pretty much. And so he knows what Todd Monken is doing. But if it was a longer-term injury, it would be interesting to watch Carson Beck, a redshirt freshman who didn't get any experience last year, with the exception of handing it off late in some couple blowouts, and five-star quarterback Brock Vandagriff. Those two guys would probably be battling it out for a more permanent starting position, and it's certainly going to be interesting to watch those two on Saturday. There's a lot of buzz about Beck this spring. It'll really be the first time that we get to see him, in action, with the bullets flying. I think he's a guy that was highly rated out of high school, and has probably been overlooked in this quarterback room, especially looking ahead beyond this season. I think everyone's looking, it's either going to be Gunnar Stockton, 5-star quarterback, Brock Vandagriff, 5-star quarterback. Well, Carson Beck is still there, and I think this spring he's kind of taken that to heart and made a name for himself in that room. But obviously watching him will be interesting, and as well as watching early enrollee Brock Vandagriff.
We're here talking college football each and every day, the voice of college football. So please like the videos, share the videos on social media. You enjoy the content, others will as well, and you connect with people on Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms that have no idea that we're here. So please share the videos and subscribe. Check out Palmer's work. Again, Dogs 247 Sports. You see it right there on the banner. All right, these spring games, you can only take so much from them, but you can take something. For me, it's more about, we know what JT Daniels is. He's a proven commodity. In other situations at other schools, it's about quarterback battle and how do these guys look against each other's just sheer throwing ability. That's checked. In regards to the line play, you brought up a good point in regards to trying to split up two teams. because offensive line, I would think that this would be one of the more important decisions that needs to be made about, do you keep the entire starting offensive line together so that they can work together against one of the top defensive fronts in the country, or do you split them up just to make it fair? What do you do right there? So that's difficult, the line play. I would think, to me, the most valid evaluation is watching wide receivers go up against cornerbacks, because that's pretty much a football game. There's nothing that's a one-on-one matchup that you can evaluate who's winning the wars out there. Just your thoughts about the spring game, what you're going to be looking out for, what stands out to you.
Yeah, like you said, defensive line, Georgia's got it covered. One of the best defensive lines in the country. Offensive line, certainly one of the most talented groups in the country. Georgia may not have its starting five figured out, but it's going to be, Matt Luke said his goal is to find the best five guys. That best five guys is going to be incredibly talented, regardless of who it is. And back to your point about splitting up, the offensive line into two teams, it's going to be interesting to watch because, with the way that Georgia rotates the offensive line and maybe is trying out different combinations on the offensive line, you've probably got 6, 7, 8 guys in there that are running with the starters. And so do you put that 6th, 7th, 8th guy on the second team and have them running together, or do you keep them with the first unit and kind of see what they look like as a group in those different combinations? But like you said, I think wide receiver and cornerback is going to be interesting to watch. We mentioned all the holes that Georgia's got to fill at wide receiver, and there's some talented guys there, but more so unproven guys. Kearis Jackson is probably the most proven of them all, led the team in receiving yards last year, was tied for the team lead in receptions. But I think everyone would look at George Pickens as that top receiver out of last year's group, played in 2 less games than Jackson, had the same number of receptions, and was 1 yard shy of Jackson for the team lead there. But outside of Pickens, Jackson is going to be the most proven guy in that room, and so he's certainly taking on a big role. Demetrius Robertson is back for his COVID year of eligibility. That's a guy that Georgia fans have been looking to make take that next step for several years now. But based on the injuries, no George Pickens, no Dominic Blaylock, no Jermaine Burton, no Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint. That's 4 of Georgia's top receivers that they were probably going to be counting on headed into this next season. So you're looking down the line at some younger guys, redshirt freshmen and true freshmen, early enrollees. Arian Smith, that's a guy that Georgia fans absolutely are excited to see. Saw him briefly at the end of the season, and he made some big plays. Had 2 receptions of over 50 yards. His first career catch was a touchdown against South Carolina. He's a guy that's going to be taking on a bigger role, especially with Pickens going down. Justin Robinson, he's a guy that probably, at least physically from a body standpoint, matches up, well with Pickens and replacing him. There's been a lot of buzz about Robinson this spring. Adonai Mitchell is an early enrollee freshman, true freshman, that's also made some buzz. And so I think, watching those younger receivers is going to be interesting. On the other side of the ball, it's the corners and the guys that they're going to be matching up against. I think coming into spring, that was probably Georgia's biggest question. Coming out of spring, it's going to be how they're replacing George Pickens and keeping those wide receivers healthy. So, I think defensively, you're looking at, you're replacing Eric Stokes, you're replacing Tyson Campbell, you're replacing DJ Daniel, you're replacing those 3 guys at the outside corner positions. You're replacing Mark Webb, Tyreek Stevenson at the inside star nickel position. That's 5 defensive backs right there that Georgia's got to replace. And they're doing that without a ton of experience. So, you've got Amir Speed, who's a senior that's kind of waited his turn. He's made some buzz early this spring. And, he could have a say in the battle for a cornerback position. Obviously you've got 5-star Keely Ringo, who is, was a top-rated corner coming out of high school. I think a lot of Georgia fans have kind of just penciled him in and said, oh, he's going to be one of the corners. Well, not so fast. Kirby Smart has said Keely Ringo, given the fact that he did not practice at all or didn't play at all. He was limited in practice. He also had a labrum injury that kept him, very limited last season. Didn't get a ton of the reps that of these other freshman corners were getting. Jalen Kimber might be ahead of him. And so, watching Ringo make the steps to, what maybe his expectations were coming into Georgia, make that progress to that point. That's going to be interesting to watch. And it's really going to be interesting to watch him matched up against some of these wide receivers. And like I said, Jalen Kimber, I would probably say your three corners that are probably going to be rotating with the ones or probably the three guys that are going to be rotating throughout the season are Amir Speed, Kelee Ringo, Jalen Kimber. That is, unless Georgia goes to the transfer portal and gets a more experienced veteran at that position. But as it stands right now, those are the three guys that I would watch at corner. A true freshman that I would watch, actually two of them that I would watch is Nyland Green. He's a guy that, highly rated corner, could have a say in this competition as well. Maybe as that fourth corner, kind of reminds me, I think it was 2 seasons ago when Tyreek Stevenson was a true freshman, kind of that fourth corner in the rotation behind, the three guys that I mentioned, Stokes, Campbell, Daniel. Those three guys were kind of your three primary guys, but Tyreek Stevenson rotated in here and there as well at a corner position and ended up playing a bunch of star throughout that season. Nyland Green could be in a similar situation where he's, maybe a rotational guy. If Georgia needs to throw an extra defensive back on the field and needs a coverage guy more so than a run stopper, Nyland Green could be that guy. And then the other guy, the other true freshman that I would watch, and this is more just an interest, out of interest rather than, he's going to have a say in the competition, is Lavassier Carroll. Was a running back out of high school, out of IMG, recruited to Georgia as a running back, and was the only running back that Georgia signed this past year. And he has, based on the depth and experience that they have at that running back position, with Zamir White returning, James Cook returning, Kendall Milton's back in the mix, Kenny McIntosh, even though he's been banged up this spring, he'll be a factor this fall. Dejon Edwards got some experience. That's a deep running back room. And so Lavassier Carroll has made the change over to defensive back, and has gotten a bunch of reps there. And from what we've heard, he's looked pretty good. So I'm definitely interested to watch him play this Saturday, and really the entire matchup between the wide receivers and corners.